We got 63 days until the inauguration, and Donald Trump is already having a huge impact on the entire world. We're seeing all kinds of things change already. Donald Trump doesn't even have the power glove yet, but he is already making deals, putting out warnings, telling people what they better be doing by the time he takes office. That's interesting to see. You just recently went to Tapachula, Mexico. Actually, you were there just a week before Oscar Ramirez was there, and we talked to him while he was there. Tell me what you saw while you were there. This is before the election, obviously. What were people talking about? What were they doing?
The reason I went there is because if you recall, in December of 2023, the very last month of last year, it's been almost a year now, we had the highest numbers crossing the southern border, the highest numbers that we'd ever had crossing the border. We were just about to embark on the political campaign season. If you're a Democrat running for office like Joe Biden was back then, you absolutely cannot have that kind of flow crossing the border while you're trying to run for election. So he went down to Mexico, but he had his top lieutenants go down there and cut a deal to do a big military campaign, which subsequently has been dubbed Operation Carousel. They rounded up tens of thousands of immigrants from northern Mexico and all the cities and towns and forced them onto planes and buses and shipped them down to Tapachula. The numbers crossing the border within 2 weeks plummeted by 80%. It was an instantaneous fix. And then they just kept that in place all throughout the entire campaign and let them build up down there in Tapachula, Villahermosa. Getting close to the campaign, I decided to go down there into the middle of the Gaza Strip of Mexico, down along the Guatemala border to see what was up, what they were thinking, what the Mexicans were thinking. Are they going to keep this blockade in place after the election? Is there going to be they're going to release everybody and have them rush forward and et cetera? And anyway, that's why I went down there. I saw caravans forming up. Joined one of them and spent a day with one of the caravans, about 1,000 people, moving about 40 clicks north of Tapachula. I was the only reporter there, by the way, hanging out with those guys, interviewing everybody. Tapachula itself was absolutely the most jam-packed. You and I have been to Tapachula at least once, maybe
couple times.
And I'm going to tell you, I've never seen it as packed in like this, like sardines before. I've been going to Tapachula since 2007, I think, and I'd never seen it like this. It was just hundreds of thousands of people down there jammed in, with more crossing in all the time from Guatemala. It was just a nightmare hellscape of suffering and people sleeping in the streets and going to the bathroom everywhere and begging, and it was awful.
So these people were moving intercity just to relieve the pressure in Tapachula, right?
Yeah, and of course in the U.S. it was reported wrongly that these were on their way to the U.S. border. No, they weren't getting past. The Mexicans were still doing Operation Carousel, and they still are even to this day. The big question was what's going to happen on election day. I wrote stories and did reports about how the vast majority of the immigrants I interviewed down there were scared to death that Donald Trump was going to win and close the border up and shut down CBP-1 and the flights program, which of course he will do, absolutely, and block off all possibilities, all avenues to the border. So Mexico's got a brand new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, and nobody really knows how she's going to respond to a challenge to Operation Carousel. She's a pro-immigrant, pro-open borders, pro-transfer, move them through. Every migrant has a right to go wherever they want, that sort of a liberal. And I thought would probably just say, look, we did our part. We got you elected, or we held him back for a year, but this is killing us down here. We got to let him go.
But what happened? Trump gave her a veiled threat, didn't he?
Gave her a threat even before the election, the day before the election. He said at a rally, I don't want to see any of them through. And if I see any of them through, it'll be immediately, as soon as I get into office, 25% tariffs on all your products, 50% if you don't fix it then, 75% if they're still coming, and then all the way up to 100% tariffs on 100% of all your goods and product. And she heard that. And so lo and behold, Operation Carousel is still operating. It's going to be operating for the next 4 years. That's just the way it's going to be. He didn't even have to enter office. He didn't even have to win election yet for that to work, but he did
He
win.
didn't even have to finish the wall. So he used to say in the first election that he was going to build a wall and Mexico was going to pay for it. Now it looks like Mexico's paying to get the migrants away from the border, and we don't even have the wall finished. We're not even building the wall. Do you think he will finish that wall?
Yes, he will finish that wall. They'll find the money, they'll declare an emergency. One other thing happened that was interesting. He appointed Tom Homan, former ICE
Mhm.
commissioner, as the border czar. And he came out with a bullhorn like at a football stadium, like he had the command of all the comms, and said to those immigrants down there, I'm going to deport all of you. None of you are staying. And those of you who are in, don't get too comfortable because you got a big bullseye on your back for deportation.
How
So
will he do that? What are some ways he could actually affect that?
initially, he's going to scope it to criminal aliens. Who can be against that, right? Criminals,
Mhm.
murderers, and rapists, and child molesters, and the like. He's going to target them. And then next, he'll target the 1.4 million who already have signed judicial removal orders on them that just never got served. So that's plenty to do right there while they build up the infrastructure they need to keep going. There'll be a lot of, because that's going to be the big issue, a big, ugly political mess there when they start rounding up families. But the point is that they have to have bed space for family groups. Homan wants to deport them together. He doesn't believe in family separation. He
Mhm.
believes in total family deportation together. So mom, dad, and the kids all go together. But you have to have facilities for that. And the Biden administration systematically closed every family detention facility that we had. So they're probably going to have to go get military facilities. They'll declare this state of emergency. There'll be lawsuits against that. Just the whole thing's going to get gummed up a little bit in lawsuits for that part of it. But they need the infrastructure. They need air assets. They've got to have a much bigger fleet of jets than they have right now to be able to move large enough numbers of people to their home countries. A lot of these home countries under Biden said, no, we won't take them. And Biden would just say, oh, okay, sorry for asking. Under Trump, those are called recalcitrant countries. What he's going to do is say, fine, if you don't want to take the people we want to deport, we're going to cancel all of your business visas, all of your student visas, all of your cultural exchange visas. Nobody from your country will be allowed to enter the United States for any reason at all unless you start taking our deportees. That's Donald Trump. So that the ones that are contemplating coming in will see that and go, I don't know if I want to drop 15 or 20 or $30,000 if that's what's going to be in store for me.
I'm going
Uh,
to get sent right back.
Nobody spends 30 grand to have that outcome.
So essentially, it sounds like you're saying they're going to start doing what we should have been doing all along,
Yeah.
or at least try to. And so then the next question is, what kinds of ways can the Democrats, if they're not in control of the House and not in control of the Senate and don't have the presidency, how can they gum up the works?
Well, plenty. They're gearing up for war. This is going to be legal war. And it'll be, you're going to find, first of all, battalions of lawyers. Right now, they're organized. Big story in the New York Times less than a week ago about how immigration lawyers across the nation have organized themselves and started to write lawsuits already for what the Trump administration is going to start doing. Everything that he tries to do, they will sue on it. So there will be some delay in implementation while that gets worked out. That's just the way it is. But some of the policies have already gone through the litigation process, like remain in Mexico, that's vetted legally, and it's incredibly impactful to be forcing people back across to wait their asylum claims there in Mexico rather than to be released inside the United States. There will be longer term detention for people that try to cross. There will be lawsuits on that. There will be lawsuits on really anything, even the wall, the emergency decree that they try to make. Now, they may not have as good a luck as the first administration because the Trump people during the first administration actually were able to get a lot of conservative judges appointed to the ninth district. About a third of them now are conservative. That used to be a full on blue, that was the place to go to challenge Republican policy. And they may not have that kind of luck this time around. And also, like I said, there's going to be information war. If you remember family separation controversy, they politicized the prosecution of adults for illegal entry, and you can't bring kids into a jail because there's molestation issues about
Mhm.
that. So they would separate them. The parents would go to jail and the kids would go to HHS. That didn't work. It was really, even Trump said, look, we that's too damaging for us, so we're going to retract. But you're going to find TV cameras zeroing in on the very first family that has an American kid who can't go with them and has to stay with relatives or something. And they'll be there with the child probably weeping and crying as their parents are being led away into the ICE van. And they're already starting to call ICE detention facilities concentration camps, ICE officers, Nazi guards. They're making allusions to the Holocaust, that these are modern day Jews being rounded up, that sort of thing, that these are just good people being rounded up. And you're going to just see unbelievable amounts of that. So be prepared to respond to that. And the administration is going to have to respond to those kind of scenes as well.